Sachin.
Dinkar?
So, Sachin, one thing we kind of hinted at last time, and I want to talk about today is product management. So, product management in enterprise is a big area of learning for me because product management at startups is something that I think both of us have experienced very closely, but it's the complexity and diversity of use cases in enterprises that kind of interest me. But before we go there, in your startup, you had an incidental exposure to product management, I guess, if so as to say it that way. So, and you were adjacent to it, right? How will you describe product management from that perspective? How would a tech leader look at product management? What does it mean for you? And were you a product manager?
No, absolutely not. But Dinkar, I mean, this is your area. In fact, before I met you, product management was not a term per se in terms of like, which was a very crystallized term in my mind. I had heard the term product owner in my place. And for a good amount of time, we never had any product owner. But what we used to do is this responsibility of supposedly product owner used to be scattered across the landscape. So there used to be a business owner who is responsible for, okay, I want this feature because I want to sell this type of thing. And then there were user experience specialists who used to double down on not only designing user experience, but also trying to do things which are a product manager also does. So, and then there used to be actual customers who used to actually come in and try to tell us features from their perspective, how they should, in fact, even design feature at times. If you can just get me a form with these two buttons.
Please increase the font size.
Exactly. So, Dinkar, I honestly, when you said we both have experienced, I think I did not have that much experience. In fact, I was looking forward to this discussion because I learned a lot about, if you just extract this from this fellow whom I worked with, this from this fellow, then probably this is what the Proma would be in my companies.
Right.
And also what I realized is that many times companies which are startup is a term which is loaded, but I think young companies, I would say, who are trying to establish.
Why do you say startup is a loaded term? Like today, multi-million unicorns also claim to be startups. Yeah, they're like 5,000 employees, they're still a startup.
Correct. I mean, in my experience, Dinkar, this is a little controversial opinion, but a startup is term used as marketing as well as state. So earlier in my mind, the state, it used to describe a state of a company, which is they are literally trying to get from 0 to 1. Yes, they are just starting up, and they have their own struggles, but they also have a very passionate group of people who are trying to make some change into something, right? But then today,
Sachin, sorry to stay there, but imagine the change in society as such. See, I believe that this marketing is totally geared towards people, recruitment, right? Everyone wants to work in a startup. And imagine, when I started my career, right, there was, I was in a smallerish company where they did not necessarily issue visiting cards, right? Because you didn't need one, right? So, so this person comes and say, it's a startup, right? Comes in and says that, we don't issue business cards. Why do you need it? And these days, you email everyone, right? No, but I'm going to get married and all that, so I need a visiting card. Anyway, I'm under a lot of pressure from my family. Why don't you join organizations like Infosys, Wipro, right? Everyone knows their names. TCS, right? Already you're working here. You don't have a visiting card, also. Who will believe you, right? Going from that time, right, where your managerial eligibility was directly proportional to the corporate, brand value. It has flipped now, right? So in some way, I take it in a positive way that today, startup has become this marketing tag because they want to attract people, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe Wipro, Infosys, or TCS may tomorrow say we are also a startup.
Yeah, and that's where I find a little bit troubling, right? Is people use startup when they want to indicate that they don't have a lot of money and they just want you to come in for passion, or they want to tell that they are really truly startup in the textbook definition, or they want to just carry that cool tag. I remember, just like you told your experience, I remember when we were in our first company around 2012. At that time, one of our employees said that I'm not able to get a bank loan. And the reason is that the bank says, give me office phone number, and we didn't have one. And so they said, unless we can call on the phone and somebody answers, this is XYZ company, they cannot verify the employment.
Yes.
So we had to literally go to, at that time, there was this Tata Walkie, which was a CDMA based phone, wireless. We bought to just get loan for our employee. So yeah, crazy things have happened.
It has happened to me. I mean, we were looking for a loan, and so there's an office. We didn't know that we had a phone in the office, and it used to ring and ring, and no one was bothered because people will email, right? So then they said, we couldn't verify your employment, and it got rejected. And luckily, my wife works for a large corporate, and they said, voila. She was earlier in her career at that stage. I was definitely I was a little advanced, so obviously I was making more money. But they said, doesn't matter. We trust the brand name, and I said thank you, and I've always requested her to stick to large organizations. So she's the source of better credit history, credit rating of us as a family. So
yeah, that's very true.
So coming back
circling
to
back,
product.
Circling back to product, I think in the young companies, this is again controversial opinion, but companies use Proma as well as Agile as an excuse of doing a lot of things in their own ways. And I find using these excuses that we are actually a young company and we need to survive, I somehow find that unfair.
Yeah, can you double click on this? I didn't.
Okay,
I didn't
so if you see Agile, right? A lot of companies say that we do Agile, but they don't follow a certain process. But they use a convenient way of Agile. They would like to do iteration planning meetings. They want to do iterations, but they want to pick and choose the parts which suit their workflow or their philosophy of Agile. And they say we do Agile. Example is they want to stick for 2-week iteration, let's say, but they don't want to do retrospectives at the end of every iteration. They don't want to actually adopt point-based estimation systems. Or they do not want to stick to a plan for the iteration. They would like to always want to have that flexibility of shuffling the scope once or twice a week. And that used to give me an indication that we are using Agile as an excuse to not follow a plan or a process.
Yeah. And kind of connecting it back, a thought crosses me is many companies might be saying they're startup because they want to reflect the agility of the organization. And today, the best way to, I'm drawing a differentiation between doing Agile, being Agile, right? Just the organization.
Yes.
Yeah, but might be indicator of that.
Yes, Dinkar, but I'm even saying that.
But inside there's still
Correct. And the fundamental difference to me is, Dinkar, how clear are you about your vision and execution strategy? Because if you are clear about your vision, that means you want to stick to a plan, despite it will have some hiccup at times. So let's say you want to build a feature.
Yeah.
Then do you have a clear evidence, or it is just a gut feel?
Yeah.
Have you tried to even collect evidence, or do you want to, this is your pet peeve and you feel this pet peeve needs to be addressed? I'll give you an example. Not in my company, not in one of my products, but I was working for a company, and the CEO at that time had a major release of a web portal, and a bunch of friends showed up at his house for some social get together, but he used that to showcase the website which they launched, and he opened it onto his fancy 60 or 70-inch television. And as luck would have it, it was stuck to only center part of the TV, and then there was massive white space on both sides. And his friends, like, they were making fun of him. He literally got super angry. He wrote an angry email and he said, drop everything, make this site responsive. And everything changed. People stayed in office for that weekend, for next 4 days, and just made the site responsive.
Yeah.
Now, this is a classic example of where you should not actually take such kind of
mismanagement.
Yes. And I think it is possible to actually collect evidence for this. You go to Google Analytics, figure out what is the maximum resolutions which you are using, and say, we need to look good on 98 percentile, 95 percentile, 90 percentile of my all screen resolutions.
Yeah, I mean, true. I mean, there's another aspect here, Sachin, that kind of bothers me sometimes. It's so in the scenario that you explained, right? There is a founder who is passionate, and when you're passionate, everything stings, which is natural. So that's one side of it, right? Then if you don't back the passion or your opinion with some evidence, you will not have the sustainability of the value out of it, right? So what I've seen is startups that are successful. There are startups where it starts with a passion, and then over a period of time, the evidence kind of negates it. So you pivot and everything, but that's not where your passion lay, right? Now you're veered off your passion, and now you're totally following evidence. So there, people lose steam. That's one side. The other side is, if you totally follow evidence, then it takes you in certain directions. You do it, but then the passion is missing, because evidence says, okay, this is where I am. This is what the evidence is telling me. This is what I have to do. This is the right thing to do. This is not something I want to do. And I feel the lucky startups are the ones where your passion gets backed by evidence. And obviously, it's a coincidence. It's statistically a shorter possibility. But if you are in that possibility, you hit it. Otherwise, wind up.
I mean, you touched upon 2 points. I think we should just talk about this. Is A, you said that many times the status quo, if you gather the evidence to prove the status quo, then essentially what happens is you are not taking risk, or you are not doing something which is novel, right? Typically, if you are gathering evidence, then you should be, and it also depends upon what type of evidence you want to gather to support your argument or reject your argument. Now, but I would like to say this: just because there are some pitfalls of actually measurement and finding evidence, that should not act as only supporting argument to not measure anything. And many times what people, and I would like to draw a parallel so that we don't talk in subjective ways. The best example is stock trading. you will see that in stock market, there are all kinds of investors. There are people who have a very methodical approach to screening a stock, reading, they call fundamental picks.
Yeah.
Then there is a different school of thought called technical picks, where they have certain chart analysis methods, and it has its own roots in statistics and other stuff. And the third one is cowboy execution, just gut feel, right? Hot hand fallacy. And there are a bunch of people who are novice fall into this category. I just feel that suddenly now it is suddenly there is a war situation. I believe that certain stocks are going to fall, but I don't have any evidence, but this is my gut feel. So I'm going to go and bet on it. My feeling is that if, let's say, these investors who are new and fueling their gut feels, some of them are going to land with massive profits.
Yeah.
But that should not be treated as a science.
Exactly. See, and that would always be the small set, and they will have the most visibility, creating an impression that if you go by gut feel, you win. Right. And coming back to the startup thing, right? And that's why there is this impression that if you go into a startup with passion, you will win. But the reality is that passion
but now,
and confidence coincided. That doesn't come out because the other side is very boring.
But now I will say this, Dinkar. Okay. Since we have established a premise, right?
Yeah.
In my mind, this has been always my problem. As a tech lead, I do want some sort of evidence-based project. And there is a very simple reason to it. I do want people to bring scope thoughtfully, rather than every time pushing me into corner saying, if we don't do this, we are going to go home. This feature
that is tricky, right? So this is one of the biggest conflict between product managers and developers, right? So look at it this way. When you say thoughtfully, I want to hear transparently. I'll tell you what is the difference between the two.
Yes.
Thoughtfully may always imply that there was a calculation, there was a thought, there was a metrics, there were an evidence for a decision, right? And it got communicated with the development team. As a tech lead, you expect that.
Hey, by the way, just to correct you, a disclaimer, I do not feel that developer needs to be justified by all the rest of the organization why they are building something. It's not the purpose. The purpose is that I think sharing what we want to achieve with this, because engineers also can do things and suggest technically how
transparency.
Transparency. Yes, I think I am leaning towards that later. Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I was worried about, sometimes you have to make a call, you have to throw a wide guess. So as long as that's done transparently, hey, I don't know, we are running out of ideas here.
That's fine.
And let's try this, right? Because we tried these many things, everything has failed. This is our last year. Let's try this. Let's throw some shot in the dark. Maybe it'll hit. If you're transparent about it, I think that is important, because everything, probably this is where my style of thinking, my biases came. Maybe someone who's very.
But Dinkar, there are in the world today, we have methods to allow you. Basically, what you are saying is, I would like to run an experiment.
Yes, exactly.
I am not sure, but I want to run an experiment.
Yes.
And for that, we have enough tech available that you can run A/B experiment. You can actually expose a certain type of feature to only 5% of your audience.
Exactly.
You know what? I have
this feature that I want to open up a feature to only 5% is actually a very complicated thing. It sounds very simple, but that means from day one, even before you have a small thing out, even if you have a web page out, you have created this ability to figure out what is your audience, figure out various segments of your audience, figure out how to identify, then figure out that how we will show them A, how will you show them B. So one of the things that I caution people when they think, hey, let's do an experiment. The infra for experiment is very expensive. If it needs to be done at a scale, or it has to be done with enough sample size, though it can be meaningful, right? So it can become very complicated. Just a side note, because I've seen many how do I say, manager types, to use the stereotype, like, let's do an experiment. It's, yes, hypothesis experiment we should all be doing, but when you think experiment, if you're thinking that to half of the population you'll give B, and to 1 million you will show A, and to 1 million you'll show B, and across geographies there's this, that takes planning and effort.
Yeah, Dinkar, recently I was listening to a podcast, and in that there was this a product launched by a United States-based bank, and this product,
which some bank,
and this was a credit card for underprivileged people who are poor in financial.
Yeah.
So they don't get credit cards
Yeah.
because of lack of credit history.
No.
So what the product was is, you deposit a small sum, let's say $500 or $1,000 in the bank, in a special type of account, type of an escrow, you would say, and they will issue a credit card against it. And then as you start using credit card and perform small payments, maybe it is this month I use the credit card for $100, I'll get, and I do a payment of $100, my credit is growing, and then essentially for the $1,000 I have deposited, now I have a $5,000 worth of credit.
So that is different. Earlier, you could, when I was in early days of career in US, like, you get a $500, it's a credit card, $500 you have paid as a deposit. You can only spend up to 500.
Correct.
So I think this is the change that this is their.
So they want to bring that inclusivity, right? Okay. So when this product was about to go live, and this product owner was a woman who was representing the target demographic. Okay. So I'm going to not say which demographic, but target demographic.
Yeah.
So one bug they identified just before 1 week before go live, and that was about the investment bank accounts. They called some portfolio accounts. You couldn't transfer the money from them into this escrow account.
Because there was no technology.
There was some, I think, connector was missing, right?
Okay.
So, and they said that this is a showstopper.
Yeah.
But the lady who was actually the product owner, she said the product targeted audience is not going to have any investment account with you. So this doesn't matter. So point is that although, Dinkar, I'm alluding that you need to have evidence, but evidence should not be treated as an alternative to gut feel, leadership. I'm
vision.
Saying, or vision, or experience. I mean, let's say you came from, let's say, marketing.
Yeah.
And you have developed a 20-25 years worth of marketing experience. You understand how marketing works. You don't need to tell or justify the developers or engineers that how some of the decisions which you will take on marketing. People accept you as leader there. What I'm trying to talk about is there are a lot of features which deserve such kind of gut feel oriented, experience oriented.
And we're talking about justification, not transparency. Transparency has to be there. You can say that, trust me, this is my,
that's
mental
fine.
Math analysis. Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. But in the other cases, there are where you are talking about some mundane, very technical features.
Yeah.
Pushing those as urgency, because those are your gut feel, which are easily measurable, which are easily validatable.
I hear you. Yeah.
And the same thing is with Agile, what I was actually griping about, right? Yeah. People use Agile as an excuse rather than a method which they believe in, or they trust in, and they want to follow that method.
Yeah. See, and that's where, toolkits, frameworks, methodologies become very critical. So,
and
for example,
one problem, sorry to cut you off, but there is one more problem which is associated with that.
Yeah.
A lot of cowboy promas exist in the world. And they don't have proper methods, tools. They don't have, and I think I sometime was talking to you offline and you said that these promas drive tasks rather than outcomes.
Yeah, I was coming to that, right? So the whole idea behind this Thanks for that reminder. The whole thing is that even, even if you're bringing in your gut feeling, even if you're I woke up in the morning and I saw a dream and I trust my morning dreams, that's why we should do this feature. Okay. That's okay. If that is how you want to roll, that's okay. Convert it into a framework. Two of my features are going to be my early morning dreams, right? Make it very transparent. And do then after 1 month, 1 year, do a research, right? Out of those two features, did they pan out to be the way they did? Yes, then go and believe in your morning dreams. If they didn't pan out, then what else, right? So the idea is that and what I keep suggesting, and this is where enterprises win over startups, is because in enterprise you need to create, which sometimes is a bad thing, but you need to explain it to others, right? And even if you have to explain, you have to put it in a structure. That is why these frameworks and toolkits become very handy. Right?
Basically, they follow a process.
They're forced into structuring. More than process, they're forced into a structure. Now in a startup, you can get away with it. We are agile, we are startup, we don't believe in structures, right? We don't write stuff, we don't do this, we don't do that. You can get away with it for some time, but the moment someone starts questioning, then all the movies and TV series about startups and how they fail and everything starts happening, because suddenly when an investor has come, your team has grown, you are unable to explain to someone why did you, and he's like, no, because I say it. And that's a typical founder fallacy. But if he had said that, hey, you know what, there was, we believe that our gut is right, so these are the 15 features we put in just because of our gut. These are the 15 features that we put because customer asked. These are the 15 features we put because competition had it, right? That's the check marks. So that if someone is doing a Excel sheet comparison, they'll say, you have this, they should be able to say, yes, you have. We may have implemented the minimal version of it. Maybe it's just a UI element, but someone who's doing a idiotic, just checkbox comparison, we show up. And then after that, you can do an analysis. You know what, our gut is speaking right to us. And somehow I feel that coming back, the organization where the gut and the passion matches the evidence, right? Those are the places, maybe I'm saying that because that is not happened, that's not happened, that did not happen in my startup. And maybe I want to blame that as a reason for my failure. But I feel, where these things intersect, that's on the other thing, such an task versus outcomes, right? And this is my biggest worry with product management as a profession, where it is going now, right? What product management is very outcome driven, right? You come in, hey, can you increase my sales, right? Then you kind of leave it up to that person, right? And what that meant was, this was a very strategic role, but as it has become big and big and big, I mean, I know one person, Sachin, he works in an e-commerce company in India. So when you buy something, and then there's a button for buy and there's a post buy tracking, right? He manages, he's a product manager of that workflow, right? So now imagine if that is what kind of analysis this person will have to do, and how much of dependency on the analysis of this person would be. So someone walking in is walking into the structure. He's told, look at this, look at this, look at this. This is your flow. If people are dropping here, if people are not checking the status of shipment every day, send them an SMS so they come to the page, so they see what is the, and there we can push some ads. We can, on that page, we can put some other stuff, all those kind of things, right? It has totally becoming a very task-oriented thing. Things to be done kind of rather than focus on outcome. And that is why Sachin, I enrolled my daughter into some online learning, one of these names that come to your mind. Yes, one of those. And at some point the course finished and they give a certificate, and personally I didn't bother. I don't care. My daughter didn't bother because she's not doing it for certification. They had, you know how many calls I got? So we have to send a certificate. I said, I don't need it. But it's a that couple of people were shocked, like, but why don't you need the certificate? It's a certificate, right? She completed the course. I said, no, I don't need. And I get, because somewhere in the workflow, it showed that there is a drop in this user's experience. He did not cross the phase where we issued a certificate and maybe somewhere else was going, right? Because no one is thinking. No one is looking at the outcome. The customer is happy. They got what they wanted from it. They got the education, right? That's all they care about. That customer is happy. But the task they haven't received, so we have to call them. I got at some point I got calls from people who were saying they were product managers, not just like the marketing team. We are product manager. We don't understand, why don't you want the certificate? That was the situation where outcome that a customer bought your service, is happy with it, did not matter. But the task that if someone is not taking this step, you have to call them overpowered.
Correct. And Dinkar, you bring a very important point that product managers should actually understand their customers too. Not a happy path scenario, but all sorts of scenarios, right? So another example of that which I came across, and I think this is a very classic case of how product managers can actually make a huge difference. For technologists, and some of these product manager decisions are 5-minute implementations. Engineering wise, they are not expensive, but they are important. Example is Baidu. And this is a very public case. So Baidu is claimed to have copied a lot of UI UX elements from Google. And they get a lot of flack for it, at least the early versions of it. But Baidu actually succeeded when Google was actually in China as well. Later on, China, I don't know whether Google pulled out of China or China asked Google to leave, but now Google is not in China. But at that time, when Google was in China, Baidu used to win. And they had only one difference between Google and Baidu, is Baidu, every result link used to open in a new tab. And they found out that the Chinese demography was clicking on all the links on the first page. Whereas Google,
let it load, then I'll go one by one.
And globally, Google had only research proven that the first result matters, rest it doesn't matter. But they liked in China to see everything. So there, every link opens in a new tab. And that, if you ask me as an engineer, it is literally one attribute on an HTML link.
Underscore blank.
Exactly. And that 1 minute fix could have made massive difference. But to understand and derive that,
exactly, yes,
to understand that behavior and to extract that information, exactly. I think this
more than that, Sachin, to overcome the orthodoxy or the success, right? See, Google got success doing what they were doing, and suddenly you're going to we are going to do exactly opposite for this demographic. People like, are you crazy? We are successful doing this. This is how we do it. And just,
I mean, like, probably they would have seen that as soon as the page loads, within a couple of seconds, people are clicking on 4 links. And they're using control click to open it into new tab. They might have seen that, and that's what might have driven them to take that decision. It is, and I do believe that if you are, as an engineer, I am supposed to be able to critically thinking about all the things and decisions which I take. Why am I picking a language over the other one? How I want to design certain features. But the fact that Proma people make it sound so obscure, black magic, voodoo, I think that also makes me very difficult to trust. Unless, and I think if, let's say, I and you have worked enough a number of years together, and I have a trust on you, I know that you're a very smart, intelligent person, then probably I will start taking your guts way more seriously and give you that credit. But when we are working, when we don't know each other,
Yeah.
and in enterprises, when these people are actually far and in different units, how do you think people should actually establish their credibility if they every question's answer starts with "it depends"?
Yeah. No, and but yeah, somewhere in and coming to this topic of product management in enterprises, right? Somewhere I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy which is going on, because um, if that is the scenario, at some point you'll say, you know what, these product managers are not going to give me any solid information. You
Yes.
know what, probably I shouldn't care. And you start creating these silos. And then you'll say, you didn't give me this information. There was something obvious in front of you, but you'll say, hey, I didn't get that information. That's not what you said. So we have done what was written there, right? And that is where this, I have heard this phrase a lot, you're throwing stuff over the wall, starts coming up. You didn't explain to me. And you know what? I will stop understanding. I'll now focus on, I got something, I have to technically implement it. That is all. And somewhere I worry that the program managers of the world, the funding organizations of the world, the people who are kind of once removed from these kind of activities, somehow I feel they like it. Because, somewhere it's very easy to say that, um, uh, you are this team, I'm giving you this much fund, this is your boss, if something goes wrong, I'll go ask the boss, right? This is product team, this is engineering team, I give you the money, you do something, there is a manager, I'll go. And people sit back and say, the managers will figure it out, right? That's what they get paid for, they will somehow figure it out. And suddenly the people, these managers who are not just managing, who are responsible for a lot of things, now also have to take care of this interdependent everything, because it's very difficult for someone sitting on top to look this cross-functional team mismatch, like this person is doing what, who belongs to this time, who belongs to this becomes very difficult. Because I think it becomes very difficult for them, because the teams are again translating everything into tasks. So if you have tasks, that means there was a task in and there was an output, task, something out, right? And then if something goes wrong, you need a manager who would look at this process, this mechanical assembly line thingy, and say this is wrong, right? Because the teams are not focusing on outcomes. So managers, a top manager doesn't come and say that, I don't know what you're doing, I don't care how you're doing things, you promised me that my revenue, my page load will increase by, I will have these many more views, my revenue will increase. That's all I'll judge you with, right? Now everyone becomes very skeptic to do that, and everyone kind of falls into that. And I think somewhere again that the enterprises are guilty of doing tasks over outcomes, because it's simple. It's simple to just explain what happened to the money in 1 year.
But Dinkar, do you believe this is only enterprises problem? Because I think this lack of measurements and not emphasizing enough on outcomes actually is also a trait of convenience, which I was alluding to earlier. Now, there is a follow-up thing which I would like to ask you, which will emphasize my point a little bit more. Is, as a Proma, how do you manage infinite building loop of features? If this doesn't work, let me just do one more thing. But sometimes less product is more. Is what you see is, and I have also been into situation where I have met people who believe that continuous building of software is the only way to
see. That is task minded, because I have a development team, they have to do something, so I'll keep on giving them features, go build.
But Instagram is still getting built.
See, but Instagram is not adding features like crazy, right? It's still Instagram. It's still, you take a photograph.
I don't know. Instagram probably has 2,000-3,000 people working behind, and they might be continuously building software. I can guarantee you that. And
Definitely.
they have probably a scope backlog for, let's say, next 18 months if they want to.
Yeah.
I think the core feature which they built is
And
about...
Instagram is not an enterprise product, by the way. If it was an enterprise product, this team would have created, it would have been Instagram plus Adobe Photoshop plus Google Photo plus, it would have become everything.
Suite, Instagram suite.
And they wouldn't have had the courtesy of calling it even a suite. Everything would have been the same menu, click, 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 and it would have been our Arial font and blue color and like all
talking about Paytm.
So, and when it becomes you kind of, you call it a super app, right? And you try to get away with it, but that's why,
or there would have been one app which will be having WhatsApp plus Instagram plus Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Which they didn't do, right? Because they focused on what is the user wanting. Definitely there is this, because they focused on outcomes. If it was task that we have a team, it has to
but
develop
now
something.
I mean, like, I beg to ask this question now is, let's say that this is a discussion whether we should merge WhatsApp and Instagram.
Okay.
And let's say a product manager is put on spot. Is that decision gut-based feel, or there should be more than gut feel around this?
Let's go back to scientific method, Sachin, from where everything comes, right? So science is not a body of knowledge. Science is a process. And outcome of that process is a knowledge which is correct and accurate in that time. Because in the next process, we may discover something new, and what we knew will get falsified. So science is a process. How does this process happen? There is a problem, right? You make a hypothesis, right? For example, when I sit in water, I'm in a bathtub or something, water comes out, right? There's a problem statement, there's an observation. Then I make a hypothesis, right? The water comes out because I'm going in, and I don't know, because I'm very heavy, right? And okay, then you do an experiment. You bring another person who has a different body dimensions, has same weight as you. You put that person in the water, see what happens, how much water comes out of it, right? Then you realize, okay, maybe I was right, maybe I don't know, I cannot recall the physics of it. I don't know if this condition is true in specific gravity or not, but let's assume that this is not true. Then you say, oh, that means the body dimensions matter. Then you bring another person with same body dimensions, different weight, you put them in. Maybe that doesn't work. Then you bring someone and both are true. So see, everything, such an hypothesis is a very important tool human mind has. And somewhere we have become scared to hypothesize, right? Oh, is it evidence-based? Are you thinking logically? Are you based on metric? We are discouraging hypothesis. Your hypothesis could be anything. It could be gut-based or something, but you have to make that initial hypothesis, right?
But then there are
hypothesis would have been.
I think in terms of like merging these two things, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to be completely hypothetical about it. There are ways in which you would be able to. Example, I'm just like giving an example. For Instagram has, I don't know, like 600, 700 million users active, or over a billion users probably, I don't know. And WhatsApp has over a billion users active. So it is not very difficult to see how many people are using, let's say, messaging feature of Instagram versus just Reels feature versus just scrolling infinitely through colorful photos, and build a case around what is the inclination, what is the primary behavior of my consumer.
So see that, and that's where the hypothesis come in. The hypothesis that you have implicitly in your mind is those who are using messaging on Instagram, right, have the same inclination, same requirement, are happy with the messaging on WhatsApp.
I do not know that, right? And that's exactly, see,
That's the hypothesis.
now let's say,
is there an overlap of intent and content and expectation, or is there not? That's your initial hypothesis.
Correct. And now
this came out of gut.
The hypothesis always comes out of gut in my mind. But
now,
now how do we say, let's say that you and I, and that's what actually I'm taking you to the next point, is that why do I believe that tech leads and promas need to work super closely rather than in hierarchy? Rather than handing over tasks to tech leads, saying that, hey, why don't you build it? They should use this as a complementing duo, pairing basically. Because I would tell you that if it is just a hearsay that you feel that it needs to be done, and in my case, many times technologists never won. Only business people won. And that was a veto power. And we used to build product. What I was thinking is, if you discuss, Sachin, how can we measure this? Now, we need to actually figure out a way in which we can test it with only certain people. Focus. I mean, like, Dinkar, today there are 100 methods available. You could test it if you wanted to, rather than punching it into product and releasing it. Because I know that whenever I write code, you know, one of the most difficult thing in a code is deleting code. Once written code never gets deleted. So I think features are also like that. Once a proma.
By the way, have you actively deleted code?
I think
can we call refactoring active deletion of code? No.
Oh, refactoring is active deletion of code. It is not, means it's one of the parts, right? Is that you are, if you find a better way of doing things, then you would rewrite it and discard old implementation.
No, discard means, do people actually delete those line of codes? Or
that's what I'm saying. Unless it was something which was very utilitarian, I have rarely deleted code. And the problem is that that one thing is connected to something, and I'm scared that if I delete this, then it will mean more work for me. So that is the reason. And I do believe that applies to features too.
I'll tell you one very interesting thing. So I was, when I was working at a physics research lab, there we were using a real-time operating system called VxWorks. So it brings up a board in two parts. So one is, there is a board bring up of small code, which is on the ROM there, which kind of comes up based on the configuration, goes to goes to a server and brings down the OS image, copies it to a memory location, program counter to that location, and the operating system, it says go, it starts, right? Now, essentially what that means is that there are so many boards out there in the world, which are probably hitting some server. Some configuration is hitting some server, right? So I was managing a couple of these servers, and now I want to do something on that server. I have no clue which board is hitting it, and I'm like frozen. So one of my seniors, he just, he said, what I do is I regularly go and change some configuration on this. So boards will start breaking up. He said, if I go and ask people, hey, are you using my server? No one knows or no one cares. But when the moment it starts breaking up, their OS image is not coming up, their boards are, they'll call me and start complaining. So that's how I know which system is using what. So I think, this exact dilemma, right? Do I delete the code? And what if there is some dependency somewhere and it will break the thing? I think that is a very good reason to actually delete the code, that because if there is some unknown dependency, it will
and that is exactly what we need to do but the same problem is applicable to features too.
Exactly. Yes.
If you create a story of deleting certain feature, I mean, like, how do you even believe that project feature set should be refactored?
Yeah, so and I think that's a very important question. So one of the things that is very popular about product managers is that product managers are the people who say no to things, right? So people will come up there, I want this, I want this. Manager will say this, CEO will say, like, you say no, 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 right? Now and that is where the courage and all these things come out. Will I ever remove a feature, right?
Mm.
And my God, so many people fall for it. They're so scared, right? And there is this mythical, maybe there is some user. Let us say there are users. Maybe let us say there are 1% of your users are using that feature, right? How actively are you deleting the feature? In fact, in my interviews, I sometimes, this is one of the questions to founders who have come from B2C companies, right? Who are applying from product management, or I ask this, you know, how do you actively remove features, right? uh, and it's very complicated. It's actually a very good question. Maybe we need a yeah, we should have a much more
In-depth
systematic
conversation.
approach. There are a lot of tools there, but that is the ultimate sign of you have arrived as a product manager when you have the courage to make a call based on some good reasons that I'm going to roll back a feature, I'm going to delete it.
Yeah, but Dinkar, I would like to also talk about one more as engineer. I think this is, in my mind, this is part one of something. Um, is what is the right way of experimentation setup in a product? And I know you said half an hour ago that it is costly to set
Yes.
up that infrastructure. But I tell you the amount of random features which I have built over a period of my life, which I believed that these should not be implemented, and later on time will. And by the way, this is not tooting my horn saying that okay, I knew my gut feel was right, because there I am always finding I have a confirmation bias too, right?
Yeah.
I remember only the features which actually did not work and which I believe they should not work. But uh, I I do want to convert this art into a little bit of science. May not be fully science, but if this is an art, product management is an art, and every art has eventually got lesser and lesser mythical, and that's when it's scaled. The more you actually keep it as this is mysterious, this is a very special niche skill. I remember Dinkar in my town, and this is I don't know whether you had it when I was a kid, and people wanted to dig a bore well for water. There used to be these special people who used to walk around, and they used to say,
In JNK, we didn't have this, but I've seen a lot
you
of
remember this, right? And they used to tell water is here, right? And people will dig there. I cannot believe when people were so poor, they used to take this 10,000 rupees bet on a person walking on earth and saying that here is water, and they used to go and dig that. I used to find it very, very disturbing at that time when I was a kid as well. So I do not want every decision to be taken like this. I understand. In business, people always put up bets.
Sachin, I think those people were very successful. And I think the reason for their success was they understood statistics a lot, right? It's, if you have a piece of land and you want to dig where the water is, over a period of time, you know how much size typically in that area, the size of the water body is. So you kind of go do a grid in your mind, go start, in simple, in this, I'll make it into a square. I'll try here. Then I'll try here. Then I'll try.
Then Dinkar, what you're telling me is this is how you can also seemingly impossible, which you can't even see, you can measure. You can set up an experiment. This is a hypothesis, whether there is a water or not, right?
Yeah.
I do believe the hypothesis is that in this area there is more water. But what
and
you
that's
just told me,
I feel those people were successful. I think maybe they were using this technique. Maybe this technique they kind of.
It doesn't matter, Dinkar. It doesn't matter. But what I am believing is that what method you told.
Wait, I want to say
there are always such methods.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Those methods can be created.
See, implementing a feature and putting it into public is like marriage, right? Once it's out there, you're committed. Stepping back is very expensive, right? But that's why nobody just marries, right? This is a hi, hello, let's talk for a minute. And marriages happen in India, especially happen between families. Let you do take so many baby steps towards marriage, right? And that is where, there is this impatience or the speed illusion of that. If we go fast, and if the experiment should not start with putting the feature in front of a customer.
Correct.
There
So
are
you're
so
saying,
many steps between
yes.
this and that, which will give you ample evidence, right?
So there are
Just
two
two
things.
things. The thing that we are building, we are not going to discuss it in public forum, is imagine how low tech we started, how low tech, how long we stayed, got got money, revenue generating capabilities by just being as low tech as possible. Because from here till having things out, there is so much of steps, right?
And in fact, I'm alluding to that. So what you're giving me is a journey.
Yeah.
Let's say the first step of every feature is a hypothesis.
Yes.
Then the second set is
never be scared to hypothesize. It's
correct.
Okay, as long as you mark it. It's a gut feel. It's based on a read up. It's based on this study. Whatever, go ahead.
So Dinkar, there are then the second is that hypothesis needs to be converted into a journey. And in my mind,
experiment, again, scientific process, small experiment. Let me do a quick check.
Yeah.
Let me do a quicker check. You keep on expanding the scope as your hypothesis keeps moving.
Yeah, maybe we should actually talk more about that, because I do believe that if you can walk us through the journey of a feature, right?
Yeah.
Like from idea to it, and we don't need to go to development and forget about production as well. How it becomes ready for development.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about it. We are both consultants, and till now, no PowerPoint has happened in our podcast, and maybe this is the right time. I had Sajjan, I had this. It was shocking as I was studying more about scientific process. It was shocking to me how much today's software development is mirroring the scientific method. Maybe in the next call we can discuss that. The journey from an idea to something that is in front of a customer. But there was one more thing that we couldn't discuss in detail, is product management in enterprises. I think it is a very, it is a place where product management as a profession will find scale. But it is also a place where product management as a profession will become commoditized. And not to say that it's a mythical profession or it's pure art, but today nothing has become more technology intensive than painting, even if it's an oil painting or even if it's stylus and iPad, right? And you have so many tools, but ultimately they reflect someone's opinion of what they want to see on the paper, right? So I think product management should not lose that part of the art, where ultimately it is someone synthesizing so many variety of inputs into a proposition. I think that is something that can only happen in a human brain, is the art part. And until we have a neural network at some point that can kind of emulate that thought process, I think definitely there is science to it. There is this art to it, the art of making prioritization. That this is a very important client. If this feature goes in, that client will feel very happy, and jane do, let's do it. It will make a big difference to someone who's very important, right? That is not that is not science, right?
Yes.
That is the subtle art. And
that is business.
we should talk about, and I fear that the commoditization of enterprises can damage that in product managers. So yeah, it's another thing that at some point I'll be very happy to talk about.
Absolutely.
I think we overran our time today. I didn't realize it went very fast.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a deep topic. I think we should follow up with this with some certain areas and go a little deeper. But yeah, it is fantastic. Thank you, Dinkar, for answering the questions.
Yeah, thanks for asking those questions and sharing your thought process. So there are a couple of topics we need to dig more on. Product managers, coming from technical background. Maybe at some point we should invite some people. The technologist view of product management. I think I want to hear more from you. Product management in enterprises, we should talk a little more about it and the journey from a random thought to something out there in the market. Yeah, we should look at that also.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.